أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم. With that, we're going to go directly into our class for today with our international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, if he's ready, and I think he is.
Yes, sir. He certainly is. Good to see you.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. So we thank all of you for being with us on this 4th day of July, 2023, a day where people are expecting a lot of fireworks. But the only fireworks we're going to bring today are the fireworks related to this language and logic called the Nunetics. So if you're looking for a bang, that's going to be your only one coming from this neck of the woods. Thank you all for being with us and being with us on time. As mentioned in the email, this class will not go any longer than 1 hour. And that's the projected time frame for each and every class during semester number 22, which we've just entered. So be prepared for that. Always be on time, or else you're going to miss some of that. Not everything that we say and do during this semester is going to end up online or on YouTube or even on wherever it is we go from here. This is actually the last class that will be featured in its totality as a recording on YouTube. So in order for you to keep up with where it is we're going information-wise, you're going to have to really buckle down and decide to make being in this university online learning course your priority. It's also the last class at which, if you're not an official member, meaning a paid up member, you won't have access to where it is we're going from here, because you won't receive the new link to a brand new website portal that will not be zoom.us. It will be a totally different portal come this time next Sunday. I know we're having this class on a Tuesday today only because we missed this past Sunday due to my travel to Atlanta and back. But we're going to get really, really serious about the distribution of this information. And I know that what it is I need, not just want, but need to share with you in the next few months to the next couple of years is going to be information that is so new, but also, yeah, well, in a sense, I could use the word dangerous, because there are some people who are in ruling positions who truly do not want this level of information to be in the hands of what they call common folk like you and I. But this is our day, despite what it is they think and despite what it is they believe they can do about it. There's really nothing that they can do about it. Their hands are actually very, very tied up in the mess that they've made of the world. So they're busy with their FBIs and CIAs and all of these other organizations. They're busy chasing each other down now. They don't have time to look at us or look for us or to look to see what we're doing every second of the day. So while we have this reprieve, let us dedicate this reprieve to genuine learning and researching. That's really all we are doing as a class. We're learning new information. We're adding it to information that we may have already learned, and we're looking to acquire more. That's really the crux of what it is this class is about. It's not a conspiracy theory class. It's not a hate the white man class. It's not a hate the Arab Muslims class. We're not doing anything like that. What we're doing is trying to contribute to the overall good and health of everyone, not just Muslims. If you consider yourself to be a true human, then we are seeing ourselves as contributing to your health and well-being also. So keep that in mind. This class is open for all true humans. It has nothing really to do with religion, as you've been taught religion. If you were taught religion correctly, you would have been taught a system of knowledge that would accommodate your human growth and development, not your ethnic growth and development, not your linguistic growth and development as an Arab speaking person or a person speaking Arabic or any other big. That's not what this would be for you. This would be something that you can walk away with as a Christian with good intent, with a Jew, a Buddhist, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, whatever ism you've accepted as your way of life, you should be able to walk away from what it is we are saying in a way which contributes to the overall growth, health, and balance of your human life. So that's what we are advocates of, true human growth and development. Let me get my notes and we're going to get started. We're doing things just a little bit differently this semester. It's going to be more formal, and we're going to be basing a lot of what we say during semester number 22 on the book I've written called Qur'anic Connections. So if you don't have the book called Qur'anic Connections, you're going to be missing out on a lot this semester. And there's really no excuse not to have this particular book because it's only $20. But it is power-packed with 50 of the most often used words within the Quran. So you want to put your hands on that because these words are being treated with nunetic influences. So it's not just what you're going to find in Lane's lexicon or the dictionary of the Holy Quran or any of those other dictionaries and lexicons. You're not going to find in this book what you're finding in those books. I will be giving you what they say in their books, but I will be treating it with the overall influences that are born out of the nunetics method. So let us begin. The word element refers to that which is intended to elevate the mental. You see how easy that was? Element, elevate the mental. These are the simple meanings that those on high like to hide from those who they consider to be on low. So again, the word element refers to that which is intended to elevate the mental part of your human development. The Quran states that everything in the skies, earth, and in us has been created as ayat, or instructing signs. Allah created the universe upon the platform of 4 basic elements, which science has presented to us as water, air, fire, and land. Once again, the 4 basic elements that science has presented to us are water, air, fire, and land. In the language of personal development, those 4 basic elements that we outlined as as water, air, fire, and land are also categorized within our personal development as emotional, that's the water element in us, spiritual, that would be the air in us, intellectual, that would be the fire operating in us, and of course the material would be the land operating within us. That's personal development. When we look at it from the vantage point of our social development, they would be commerce, that's water, government, that's air, education, that would be the fire, and culture would be the land. These 4 elements on all 3 levels of expression represent the operative qualities in and of created things. The Quran was revealed in the vernaculars of agriculture and commerce. Remember that, learners. The Quran was revealed within the vernaculars, meaning the language construct of how agriculture and commerce speak to human life, inasmuch as it was speaking to farmers and traders. That was the bulk of the people who were existing within the provinces where Muhammad the Prophet's feet trod about 1,500 or so years ago now. Those people were mostly farmers or agriculturalists and traders, people involved in commerce. Once the agriculture was pulled out of the fields, then they had to have a market for the agriculture, and that created the commercial people, the people who were making money, the people who were doing trade, the people who established bartering systems that grew naturally out of their interest in agriculture. In elemental terms, agriculture and commerce are represented symbolically as land and water. Land being the agriculture, as mentioned, and water being representative of commerce. Anytime you see MER in any English word, it has to do with water, whether it's merchant, mermaid, it can even be MAR as in marine. Marriage has to do with the water because marriage has to do with your emotionality. That's why they call it a relationship. Any word in English like friendship that has ship at the end of it, it means that you're going to be trotting some unstable waters every now and then, like all relationships and like all ships do. There are peaceful days and then there are turbulent days. The Quran also tells us that Allah created the human being from what's called teen. And teen is an Arabic word that is translated into English as soft clay. Teen, soft clay. And this clay is a combination of land and water. Isn't that interesting? Clay, this soft clay, not the hard clay, not the baked clay. That's all stone, that's all material. But the soft clay is soft because of a moisture content. A moisture content. That moisture is its water added to the material, which is the land. So teen being a combination of land and water, that would leave air and fire, which I have described as spirit and education. Air and fire, spirit and education, symbolically and respectively. That would leave air and fire as conceptual successors necessary for the completing of our evolution as social creatures destined for human excellence. Allah says that he breathed his breath. So there goes the air. Huh? He breathed his breath. Nafakhatu. When I have breathed into him of my breath or of my ruh or of my spirit. When he has breathed that into the clay vessel, then the clay vessel was not only then containing water and land, but now it has the additional third element of air. The only missing element at this point would be the fire. And the fire is represented in the character called the jinn. The jinn, known popularly in the Quran as Iblis. So now you have all four of the necessary constituents comprising the four basic elements that you find everywhere within the universe, as far as science knows. All four of those elements are actually operating as constituents within the human being, him and herself. All four of these form the quaternary essence of our total human package. So remember, human beings, you're not just one thing. You're not just a materialist. You're not just a spiritual creature, giving yourself to God spiritually. You're not just an academician, giving yourself to the role of wise guy, smart guy, educated fella. That's not all a human being is. And you're definitely not just a person of commerce, a person who's just out to make a bunch of money. Now, there are people who have taken on one or more of these basic constituents and they've dedicated themselves to one or more, but they've done so to the extreme. The Quran is here to give us the blueprint for establishing the balance between all of these necessary components within the human nature. Now we're going to say a few words about the nature of Qur'anic Arabic words. Single Qur'anic Arabic words often represent a combination of multiple words and ideas. Every letter in the Arabic letter system has its own unique meaning, and each meaning is connected to one, a part of your human body. Each letter in the Arabic letter system represents a part of your human body. Number two, it represents something in the environment outside of you, which resembles that part of the body. And number three, it represents an abstract idea, a non-physical idea that is born out of the activities of the first two. Now, if you want to understand that in more detail and you haven't done so, reference my book, Nunetics, for the full picture. But if I were to use the letter Alif as my first example, Alif as a part of the human body, as most of you already know, this is basically for the newest of people. Alif, that straight line, represents the spine that is holding up your body structure. It is a support for your body structure. And without your spine, no matter how muscular the rest of your body might be, your body will collapse without a spine. So the spine is actually the central pillar or the main support for your physical body. So that's the part of the body that we're discussing in the letter Alif. But in the environment, Alif represents any central pillar that's upholding a structure. So if you talk to a person who does construction, or if you look in your own house, you can see that in your walls, there are points in the wall where pillars are established. If you just tap along the wall, you'll hear hollow, 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 poof, that poof right there. There's a pillar right there. Or sometimes you'll be in a big enough room where they will establish the central pillar right in the middle of the room. You'll actually see it. And if they were to snatch away that central pillar, it would just be a matter of time before that ceiling would actually collapse on you. Doesn't matter how elaborate the room is or how beautiful the structure itself is when you look at it from the outside or when you walk inside, how expensive the rugs are, how great, what kind of a great glass the windows are made of. And that doesn't matter if the building does not have a central pillar or central pillars supporting its structure. It will eventually collapse from the weight. And it's the same thing if they were to pull your spine out of your back, or if you were to injure your spine in a car accident or a fight or something, and your spine became injured, you would either become crippled or you could even die if your spine is damaged to that degree. So do you see now how the part of the body, being the spine, operates in not somewhat like, exactly like the central pillar operates in the society, because the human mind got the idea to establish central pillars within structures by studying the human structure that Allah created. So all of these houses that have been standing for all of these years, all of these buildings, from Empire State Building to the smallest building, if they're going to be here with some longevity, they're going to establish some kind of essential pillar for their upkeep. Yeah, they got that idea that was inspired in them by what Allah created in the human being and in the animals around them. And then as an abstract idea, which is born out of the activities of the body part and the environmental part, the abstract idea, the non-physical idea, is born out of the activities, meaning how those physical things operate within you and within the environment. So what is it on the abstract, invisible level that operates not somewhat like, exactly like the spine in your back and the central pillar in a building? The abstract, the invisible thing that operates exactly like that is whenever we make an agreement. Whenever we decide to enter into a contract with someone for something, when we shake hands or when we sign on the dotted line on that contract, we're doing exactly the same thing on the metaphysical level or on the abstract level that the physical pillar is doing in upholding its share of the agreement to uphold this structure, or what the pillar is doing, what we call the spine in our back, when it agreed to uphold this particular weight and this body mass, doing exactly the same thing. And in that same vein, in the same way, as I mentioned earlier, that the spine can become damaged and the Body can fall and fail in the same way that the pillar can become damaged, smashed, and the building eventually will fall. It's the same thing with the contract. It's the same thing with the abstract pillar called an agreement. If you break the agreement, the same thing happens as if you broke your spine or if you broke the pillar. The relationship between the ceiling and the floor, in case of the central pillar, would be ruined. In the case of your body, the relationship between your upper body, your head, your torso, and your lower frame, your legs and your knees and your feet and all of that, that structure would be interfered with. So all three of these levels are what Nunetics brings to the table that no other system that I know of has brought to the table or is bringing to the table. This is your unique gift from Allah, your inheritance, as I like to call it. Now, three-letter root words can also be broken up into two-letter combinations of meanings. As an example, all Arabic words that contain the combination consonants of guttural, liquid, labial, and there's a table that outlines all of the essential consonants and what part of the mouth they're being spoken from. So get the book Nunetics if you don't have it. The chart is in there, or purchase the book Qur'anic Connections that we're reading from now, where the chart is also in the beginning of the book. So guttural is the back of the throat, liquid is the top palate in the mouth, and the labials have to do with any sounds that are produced by using your lips, like b, b, p, p, f, v. All of those letters, pardon me, take the lips in order to pronounce them correctly. And I want you to listen very carefully. This is so important, and you have not learned this in any of your Arabic classes. God bless them. Inshallah, if they hear what we're saying, my prayer is that they will want to follow suit. And it's an easy method if you put your mind to it. So we're talking now about the mixing or blending of two elements, meaning two letters. Now take as an example the word Khalifa. It is such a word that is connected to the word Arab or Arabiya, as we call the language, Arabic itself. Now look at the gates. Look at the pearly gates that Instructor Benjamin Bilal just opened up for you. I'm telling you that the word Khalifa, that popular word in the Quran, that the angels had all of these questions about. Well, they didn't have a whole lot of questions. They had one question. Are you going to create one who's going to make mischief and shed the blood? That word Khalifa, based on its consonants, its essential construction is related to the word Arabiya. And we know that as a language, not as a people. We know that as a language. Now let's see how that's done. The two elements that go into the making of a Khalifa are jinn and man. That is essentially what constitutes our human construction. Jinn and man. Read the Quran for yourself. We like to think that these are two separate and distinct entities that operate independently from each other, but that's not true. Allah said, get ye down from here, all of you together. Jamia. We were jamming in the beginning. Allah said, I got to take the jam fest down into the earth now. Let that be your place of sojourn for a time. So again, there are two elements that go into the making of what we call the human kind. And the two elements that go into the making of Arabiya as a language are Aramaic and Ethiopic. Another great find. Don't worry about that now. Don't try to get deep into that. That's just to whet your whistle for the future. So again, two elements that go into the making of the Khalifa, two elements that go into the making of the language we now call Arabic, and they are the ancient Aramaic language and the ancient Ethiopic language, or the language of what was called Abyssinia at the time. Now, you might be wondering, well, how does that connect the concept of Khalifa with Arabiya? Now you have to pay special attention because this is not in front of you in writing. The essential letters or consonants that go into the making of the word Khalifa are the letters Kha, Lam, and Fa. Kha, the guttural, as we said here. Li or Lam, the liquid. Tongue goes to the top palate to say L. And the labial, the lip sound, which is Fa. Now look at Arabia. The Ain is a guttural pronounced from the back of the throat. The Ra is a liquid where the tongue again has to go to the top palate, like the letter Lam, Ar, to the top palate. And then the Ba or the B is also a labial, like the F in Khalifa. So what does that mean according to the Nunetics method? It means that they are absolutely, positively, and definitely going to have related meanings. Not always the exact meaning. That's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for relatives. Just like your cousin is not your brother, but he look a lot like you or like your brother. That's what we're talking about. Semblance is what it's called. Now listen carefully. This is something that you can take into your standard Arabic class and dazzle them with this finding if their minds are open to new discoveries. Because now you can begin scratching your head and employing your brain in the direction of what the Khalifa and Arabia have in common. And you can go into the Quran where Allah speaks about the making of the Khalifa that we just mentioned, the question on the part of the Malaika, the angels. Are you going to make one who's going to create mischief and shed the blood? Well, whatever that mischief is and whatever that shedding of the blood is should also be related to what the language of Arabia is in its construction and in its mission. I'm going to leave that for your brain to figure out. Arabia creates mischief, fasad, and bloodshed. Now remember, Allah didn't say that the Khalifa would be making mischief and shedding blood. That was the angel's question. That wasn't Allah speaking. Allah just said, I know what you don't know. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no, that this is what the Khalifa would be doing. But we do know that there must be the possibility for these things to occur based on the construction of the Khalifa. And we should know that metaphorically and metaphysically speaking, that's also the potential of the language we call Arabiya Mubin, as it's called in the Quran. Yeah, sometimes the clear truth will cause bloodshed and mischief, especially in a world full of lies. You start coming with the truth, they call you conspiracy theorists. They call you all kinds of things when you start bringing them the raw facts. Troublemaker. Now, as a Proto-Semitic, which should actually be pronounced Shemitic, what we call a Semite is actually to be called a Shemite, according to the actual pronunciation of those words. So as a Proto-Shemitic language within the Afro-Asiatic family of root word languages, Arabic distinguishes itself as the chosen language for the Quran's expression. The fact of it not having been subjugated by surrounding possible conquerors, such as the Romans and the Persians of that time, Arabic letters remained relatively pure in its retention of nature-based meanings called al-fitra in the Quran. Nature is called al-fitra in the Quran. So it's not to say that Arabic is the oldest language. Arabic is an offspring out of Aramaic and Ethiopic and some other ancient languages that predate Arabic, Hebrew even. But because something is older doesn't mean that it's pure. If the older ones had become contaminated by foreign invaders and their ideas for language. The ancient Arabs of this particular day and time, they really had nothing to conquer. So the major conquerors of that day and time, such as the Persians and the Romans, but that were flanking them on both sides, they never swooped down to take over those people's culture, to take over those people's social ideas. So the language itself remained one of the most pure languages actually on planet Earth at the time. And that's a wonderful find. That's how they became the best poets of their time. They were known as the people, the go-to people for the most sophisticated use of language, poetry, prose, all of those things related to articulation. These are the letters which give us the root words that we learn in order to recognize the meanings of Qur'anic words. Now, if the popular three-letter combination represents the roots, as they tell us, root words, trilateral words, triconsonantal words, etc., if those three letters represent the roots, then it is common sense to see the single letters as seeds. They are seeds that produce those roots. Classical Arabic's uniqueness was in its ability to preserve most of its Proto-Semitic features in a way that is unparalleled by any other member of the Afro-Asiatic family of languages. This workbook is not alphabetical, nor is it attempting to highlight the most important words in the Quran. Every word, every letter, and even every sound in the Quran is important. And that is what is to be understood while reading this divine revelation known as Al-Quran. This current explanation of mine's happens to be book one in a series of dissertations on the more intrinsic meanings of Quranic Arabic words. I give all praise and thanks to Allah for inspiring me to begin such a monumental and necessary task. All errors are unintentional and should be laid at the doorstep of my inadequacies. Any and all comments are welcomed and should be sent to nunetics2@gmail.com. You will get a response if one is requested. So continue to strap in and get ready for the linguistic ride of a lifetime as we explore the fascinating fundamental features clocked into the fitra-based meanings of 50 popular Quranic Arabic words. So let's get going to the first word that I have chosen for this conversation. And it is the first letter of the Arabic alphabet called the Alif. What does Alif mean? Leader. It leads the alphabet. What is my nunetics description? It represents that which is open, easy, and polite as communication. Now, you're not going to get the tit for tat meaning and understanding that you may be looking for. I'm going to leave your brain to begin going to work to figure out why I've used these particular words. And if you don't know, then it's up to you to pick up your computer, your cell phone, or whatever you use to communicate emails, and ask me. If the meaning of what I'm saying doesn't come across clear in this 1 hour, then your job is to write that down as a question and ask Instructor Bilal. Open, easy, and polite communication, Alif. Now let's look at these seed letter meanings, and I believe a lot of this will become clearer to you. Alif is the spine as the leading strength in the skeletal body. It represents any major support upholding a structure. So we described that a bit earlier. The letter Lam, now remember in Alif, we're talking about Alif, the A, Lam, the L, and Fa, the F. So Alif represents the spine, Lam represents the human tongue, and the tongue is a communicator. It's a communicator. And Lam also represents things up high or above. So the words that you're reading in the Quran, most of them that contain the letter Lam have to do with the things up high. So we talk about Allah, see? Allah, he's got the lambs with a shadda, reigning supreme over it. When we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, see Allah, you see up high. Allah is high and above all, right? So where you see this lamb, as you continue to read the Quran, pay attention to where you see this lam being employed by Allah in the Quran. And you'll see more than likely that it has to do with something that is lofty. See, even in English, we have the L doing great and high things, like in illuminate. See, that's a great and high thing. Intellect. See, that's a high endeavor. Intelligent. Two L's in both of those words. Love. See, these are lofty. So when you begin to teach your children based on these Nunetics concepts, you can give them more than any Webster's dictionary has ever thought to give them. Now, that's lam. Fa means the nose as it splits the face in half. It also represents easy breathing. If we breathe in through the mouth and breathe out through the nose, or breathe in through the nose and then breathe out through the nose, breathe in through the mouth, breathe out through the mouth. See, all of that is designed to split the breathing into two components, in and out, either through the nose or out through the mouth, in through the mouth, out through the nose, or whichever way you want to switch it up. The nose and the mouth are working together as partners in that endeavor called breathing. And it makes breathing easy. If you were to breathe in and couldn't breathe out, you'd understand what I'm talking about when I say easy. If you were to breathe out and couldn't breathe back in, they call that death. So the combination of actions is what we're calling easy breathing. And it represents any split, slit, or cleave. It also indicates surface identification. Surface identification, not deep identification, just what you're seeing on the surface of things. See, even the word surface has the English letter F. Now, the Lane's lexicon meaning for alif, lam, fa is he kept or clave to it. He frequented it, resorted to it habitually. He became familiar with it or accustomed, habituated, became sociable, companionable, friendly with him. He liked or approved or was amicable. It also means to protect or to safeguard. It represents a covenant or an agreement, an obligation involving responsibility for safety. It also means to unite or bring together. Just like that spine in your back, it unites 33 vertebrae, brings them all together. Alif also means a state of union, alliance, agreement, to cause union or companionship, to collect, connect, join, or conjoin. It can also represent 1,000, a certain rounded number that is well known. See, that is well known. How do we connect this idea of being well known with another Arabic word that is consonantally connected to alifa? Think about the word arafa, knowing that the lam and the ra are interchangeable. So alafa can become arafa, arafa. What does arafa mean? It means to become known, but on the surface, not deep, just on the surface knowledge. Now, what is the branch commentary on this? The word alifa signifies a leading effort to keep things or persons close and protected. It especially refers to those whom we have special bonds with, such as family, tribe, community, government, etc. These entities that we have close communication with, that we look towards as our protectors, or that we look to protect, the ones that we enter into a covenant with, a bond, a special bond with. Alifa represents the development, the overseeing, and the ongoing maintenance of our social concerns, This condition is to last all of the way throughout the duration of any covenant or agreement, especially between close family members or associates. Alifa is a bond that is a lasting one. You don't put the central pillar in the building to have it removed this time next year. No, once you establish that pillar, it's a permanent stand. It's a permanent fixture. Once you establish a relationship with people that's meant to bring people together in social unity, you don't just break that bond because you didn't feel well that morning. So you decided to just cancel out the agreement. That's not how covenants go. You establish a covenant, it's meant to be long lasting, if not permanent, just like your family bond, just like the bond you have with your ethnic group, just like the bond that you have with your community folk. Alifa is that bond that is a lasting one. As an opposite meaning, those not sharing these concerns become what is called aloof. Aloof. That means you're still there, but we see you at a distance. He's there, but he ain't quite with us. You know? He must think himself to be too high and mighty to be with us. See? Now, just to give some follow-up comments, and we'll be through for this evening. Family has to do with this social bonding that we're calling alifa. And family, one of the words for family in the Quran and in the Arabic language is ahl. We would transliterate that as AHL, ahl. You can say it to yourself on your side of the computer. Now, AHL, and I have discussed with you in the past certain words that are connected with the HL sound, like halal, and also like hilal, the beginning crescent of a new moon, the hilal. And I've also discussed with you the importance of what is called the A of negation, meaning that certain words in Arabic and in English and in many other languages that begin with the A sound, it has to be the beginning of the word that has an A sound, that A negates or cancels out the meaning of the word that follows that A. So HL in and of itself is indicative of a concept. So ahl means to negate whatever HL is representing. So what does HL represent? Well, think about these things. In English, we have the word whole that has the HL sound. I know it begins with a W, but the W is silent, isn't it? So whole and holistic, which does begin with an H also, represents something that is continuous and contiguous. So if the A of negation is added to the word whole, then it becomes not whole. It negates the meaning of the word that follows it. So ahl, although it represents the family, it is still saying to us with wisdom that that family you're talking about, those few siblings and that one set of parents, they're not the whole family. The Western world turned the nuclear family into the family, whereas people of families around the world, they don't see family as just a mother, father, son, daughter, and a dog. Or a cat. That's not how the rest of the world outside of Europe sees a family. Europe necessarily began seeing the family as a nuclear family because of the necessary protections they had to have in place because of the environment that most of them were born out of, historically speaking, the caves and the rough weather and the land poor, resource poor, people poor, bubonic plague. All these things plagued Europe for thousands of years. And they're going through their share of hiccups right now as we speak. There seems to be some covert attempt to reduce Europe, on the most part, back to the Stone Ages. I don't know what's going on with that one. But the point is that when you're being bombarded by these negative forces, you tend to close in your ranks. And even your cousins become your enemies, as the Hatfields and the McCoys in history has taught all of us through the history books we learned in school. Cousins became mortal enemies. But that's not true for families around the world. In many parts of the Eastern world, much of the African world, much of the Asian world, their families are extended families, not nuclear families. So we need to return to that concept. It's not just you and yours, that you're selling drugs to feed. That's why you're selling yours, because you don't have outside support other than those few people that you call your close family, your personal family. Ahl means that you have not yet completed your family circle because you haven't invited in your extended family. You haven't invited in the community members to serve the interest of the family and for you to serve the interest of the business life in your community. So Ahl is something that is growing, just like the Hilal moon, the crescent. It doesn't stay a crescent. It's a Hilal because it's intended to complete itself as a circle that we call the full moon. So wherever you see that HL like that, it represents whole. And if it says AHL, as it does in Ahl, it means that it is not whole, at least not yet. You eat halal food, a different H, but halal food means that it contributes to your body's wholeness, your body's complete nutrition. That's what halal is supposed to be doing. But Ahl means that it's going in the not in the opposite direction necessarily, but it's not completing that picture for you of what wholeness suggests. In the Quran, there's a surah called Quraysh, and the first line of it is Li'ilafi Quraysh, and they translate it as for the protection of Quraysh. And Quraysh is known to be a very famous tribe that Muhammad the Prophet was born into. Li'ilafi Quraysh. Li means for or toward or even belonging to. It's the letter lam. Belonging to who? Ilafi. Ilafi is from alifa, the same word that we've been discussing in the letter Alif. And what do they say it means? Covenant, agreement, for the agreement of the Quran. And they also say for the protection. See, whenever you have an agreement, you have a protection. I agree to keep you and yours safe. You agree to keep me and mine safe from invading enemies or people who impose themselves upon us or whatever. You know, we have an agreement. And that's how the ancient tribe called Quraysh was back in that day. So it represents a covenant. Now, I mentioned that when you have a three-letter root like Quraysh, which is Qaf, Ra, Shin, that it's actually a combination of words, that when you split the word down the middle, you get more than just that one word. So with Quraysh, you have Qaf Ra representing one implication, and Qaf Ra represents a gathering of resources, a gathering. When we say Iqra, you see that Qaf Ra there also? It represents a gathering. No, instructor, it means read, to read. Well, what is reading? Reading is a gathering of words. Whichever way you spin it, you're going to come out with a gathering or a collecting of something. So Qur is a collecting of something. And what is Reish? So see, it goes from Qaf, Ra, then you take that middle letter to begin the next word, Ra, Shin. So Ra, Shin gives us the word Reish. So what is Reish? We already know that Qaf Ra is indicative of collecting. Uru is a city of a collection of people who are living in the same town. So wherever you find that Qaf Ra, you're going to have it as the underlying meaning to collect or to gather. So what is Reish? Reish is an Arabic word that means literally feather. Feather. Now, if I were to take the sheen off of Ra Sheen and put a seen on instead of the sheen, it would be Ra Seen. And what is race? Race is the Arabic word for top piece, the head, the leader over the body. So race represents leadership. So you might ask yourself, well, then what does feather have to do with leadership if we were to exchange the seen for the consonantally connected letter sheen? Well, ask the Native Americans, the so-called American Indians, what feathers represent. They represent different levels of leadership, from the squaw who might be sporting one feather to the chief who sports a head full of feathers, and each one of those feathers means something pertaining to his leadership. So the feather represents leadership because the feathers are connected to high flying birds that fly above the fray and the confusion. They can see, their insight is much more, what do you call that word when you can see all circumspect? Like the owl can sit and turn its head all of the way on a 360-degree swivel. So birds, because they can fly high, the eagle and the sparrow and all of that, birds were seen in the human framework as being that part of the human being that represented the spiritual ascension of the human dynamic. Spiritual ascension. This is beautiful when you understand it. So this Quraysh is not just talking about some tribe of ancient Arabs who gave the prophet a hell. Can't be just talking about that. They're not the ones who came into the covenant that this surah is talking about. This surah is talking about an idea that is much more metaphysical, symbolic, and grandeur than some physical ethnic tribe sitting in the middle of somebody's desert. That's not. They were the main ones trying to kill the prophet back in the day. Think Allah will put a glorification surah in there about them? That's not what this is talking about. Li'ilafi Quraysh, they were not the protected ones that this surah is speaking to. This surah was speaking to those who were about the business of collecting leadership, assessing leadership, training leadership in what? Spiritual elevation. Feathers take you up high as a bird. The chief with all of his headdress, his featherings and headdress, he was the one who had the highest understanding of tribal life and issues and concerns, more so than the common person who wasn't paying that level of high attention to the social order. So that's what makes the chief the chief. That's why he earned all of those feather dressings. Not on his arm, not on his legs, not on his torso. He wore it on his head, the race. See? Now, in my conclusion, the Quraysh in their day and time, because they were the head honchos amongst all of the known tribes of that time, the scholars came to deduce the word Quraysh as meaning big fish. And even in our day and time, the real meaning of big fish has not escaped us. When we call somebody a big fish, we another word for that is a high roller. They were the high rollers. They were the ones with the big bucks. They were the ones with the influence, the most influence in the society. So the Quraysh were known as the big fish also. The ones with the influence, but the ones with the influence weren't necessarily an ethnic group in the middle of the desert. The ones with the influence were the ones who had dedicated themselves to the higher sciences, to higher spiritual development, so that they could influence society to go in the proper and more balanced direction. So in other words, when you read this surah called the Quraysh, you're not reading a history book. You're not reading about an episode in somebody's ethnic history. You're reading about something that happens and can happen and will continue to happen ad infinitum from now until Judgment Day. You could be participating in this Quraysh experience right now as you speak, if your family is tight like that. If your family is respectful of its leadership, especially those who have spiritual acumen among you. And it doesn't have to be blood relatives. It can be what we're experiencing right now in the Nunetics group. Listen, I just came off of a weekend in Atlanta with one of our learners, one of our instructors, Imam Kareem Rahim. He has a Nunetics class every weekend, every Sunday. And we were blessed to be able to sit in that class, an hour's worth of classroom time and teaching, just like this is going to be. And man, oh man, he's got a room full of learners, most of whom participate in this class, but some who don't have time to participate in this class, but they're in that class every Sunday. And they're reading directly from the Nunetics book, just like I'm reading right now directly from the Qur'anic Connections book. And they are having the time of their lives. And I don't think anybody who calls themselves a scholar, who's worth their salt, would sit in a class like that and be bored or say, this doesn't sound like it's credible. No, man, he did I think I recorded it. If I did, with his permission, I'll make it into an audio and send it to all of you. It was wonderful. It warmed my heart so much I wanted to just shed tears when I was listening to his class give answers in Nunetic framework. It touched me deeply. I wasn't expecting that. So inshallah, I'm planning on going back to Atlanta, letting you know now in a couple of weeks to finish what they started, to assist them in all that they are starting, to make sure that they get their sea legs, because Nunetics is about to become a worldwide phenomenon. I got a message in my recording, in the recordings on my phone, and it was a brother calling me. He said, I am Pakistani, but I'm living in England, and I am an attorney. And he said, I have been listening to your webinars. And he said, I am fascinated, and I want to know how I can become a part of that class. So these are not small change, people. These are Quraysh. These are big fish that are coming now. Not that you guys aren't big fish. None of you are minnows, but I'm telling you, Allah's about to bring us some really, when I say big fish, I'm talking about people who understand and can manage their sensitivities while they do everything else that they're doing, like Imam Kareem is doing. He's already an imam, but he's managing his sensitivities to accommodate Nunetics. How many of you are doing that? Keeping pace with what it is you need to do on your job and in your family life, and still make time for Nunetics. You can still swim in this water. That's what we're looking for. So with that said, we're not going to open up for any questions and answers. If you have any questions, simply jot them down and email them to me. And don't make the questions frivolous. And please don't ask me any more questions about Salat. Has my only comments been about a ritual prayer since I've been teaching? My goodness, you go through a 4-hour video and you find 10 minutes worth of commentary on a ritual, and you want to just ask me about a ritual, how this ritual should go, how many times, what you should do. Go to where Allah says in the Quran that righteousness is not in turning your faces east nor west. Allah is telling you righteousness is not in your rituals. It is in doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C all the way through. Go find a helpless, homeless person to help. Then you'll be doing much more than whatever you could possibly be doing in a ritual prayer performance. Go knock on your mother's door that you haven't talked to in 2 years since COVID, and go give her a hug and some groceries. Stop on the end of the highway where you know there's homeless people out there begging. You can see their conditions, and give them a few dollars or bring them some food. Then you'll be doing some real salat, some real connections. But until then, please don't bother me with the rituals anymore. That time is gone. So from now on, again, our major classes that are being recorded will be on a different platform. Those of you who are officially joined, you know exactly where to find us as of next week, this time next week. This is the last class on the YouTube platform. The only thing that will appear from this point on are YouTube shorts, 2 minutes, half a minute, just to tell you what we're doing on Rumble and some other platforms that we're about to engage. And we will also be sending out the links through a different webinar platform other than Zoom. I will still have a Zoom presence, but it won't be for the major classes. So if you're not officially registered, as I said, you won't know what's going on or where to find us. So email me to find out more. CosmicQuran1@gmail.com. Listen carefully. Cosmic Quran 1. I'm going to spell that out. COSMICQURAN 1. That's the number 1 at gmail.com for further information. To register, simply go to the nuneticsinstitute.org website, and there's a tuition tab there. If you have a problem with that, then call me or email me and say, instructor, I had a problem. What other way is there to become involved in this wonderful history making class? And I'll give you all of the information that you need to know. Okay, so thank you all for being with me as I greet you in the greetings of peace that obligate each and every one of us to keep the peace. Salaam Alaykum.